Okay, here's how this week started on the Iran front. Donald Trump bragging that he had a very good call with a collection of Middle East leaders. On Saturday, he posted, pertaining to peace, an agreement has been largely negotiated. Final aspects and details of the deal are currently being discussed and will be announced shortly. Headline after headline then telegraphed how peace was imminent. And then it all fell apart. Just 2 days later, on Memorial Day, U.S. forces launched airstrikes hitting multiple targets inside Iran. The U.S. called those strikes defensive. Tehran said it was a gross violation of the ceasefire. Either way, they did not help bring either side closer to a deal. And to add insult to injury, during a White House cabinet meeting today, Trump was asked about a report that Iran was talking with Oman, a key strategic U.S. ally, about a toll system for ships crossing the Strait of Hormuz. And here's how that went.
We'll watch over it, but nobody's going to control it. It's international waters, and Oman will behave just like everybody else, so we'll have to blow them up.
Ah, yes. Nothing says peace like threatening to blow up an ally in the region. Now then, tonight, the U.S. carried out additional strikes in southern Iran off the coast of the Strait of Hormuz. A U.S. official told MS Now, quote, these actions were measured, purely defensive, and intended to maintain the ceasefire. I don't know how to make sense of that. But joining me now is someone who does, Rob Malley, one of the lead negotiators of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Rob, it's great to see you. Let me start by, I want to start with these reports on the new U.S. strikes in Iran and how you think these strikes and the strikes that took place on Monday night could impact the negotiating process. Like, what is the discussion when military action is happening and there's efforts to move a negotiation forward?
So, Jen, I think they're less likely to have an impact on the negotiations, but they are a sign that neither side is confident that the negotiations are going to succeed. I mean, in some ways, it's the U.S. sending the message that they're prepared to go back to war, and it's Iran sending the message that they don't fear it. And so, you know, we're in the process where talks are taking place in parallel to warlike actions. But as you said, the confusion that we are currently witnessing is so great. I mean, I feel like saying, because I've been on the show before and we've had the same discussion, this is Groundhog Day, but the groundhog is unwell. I mean, given what the president has said, you mentioned some of what he said, but he also mused about saying he wouldn't reach a deal with Iran unless Saudi Arabia and Qatar and other countries agreed to normalize relations with Israel, which they will not do, certainly not now. He said they owed it to him, as if they owe him anything when he's the one who got them into the mess, and now they're begging him to get them out of the mess that he created. So, you know, it's so hard to make sense of it, and all one could hope is that his initial instinct, at least a few days ago, which is, let's end this war, let's get out of this mess, that will prevail against the other instinct, which is his desire to always appear to have completely annihilated his enemies.
That should be everybody's hope. And we've talked about this before, too. I mean, I don't have to tell you, it took roughly 2 years to negotiate the Obama nuclear deal. I mean, even longer if you count the JPOA that was right before it, that actually had a fair number of detail in it that was agreed to in 2013. It was sort of a temporary deal before the JCPOA. You understand more than anyone really how long something like that this takes. Now, the agreement Trump was touting included a 60-day ceasefire extension during which the Strait would open and negotiations over Iran's nuclear program would take place. That's what they've been talking about. On a practical level, let's hope that there is instincts and desire to move this forward. What needs to happen next? Because there's a lot of details. I look back at the JPOA. There's a lot of details in that. We're very far from that. So what would need to happen next from here?
Well, there's what will need to happen and what at best will happen. I think the best one could expect at this point, maybe I'll be wrong, is a very, very bare bones deal in which the Strait of Hormuz is opened. In other words, the U.S. ends its blockade, Iran ends its closure. They reached some kind of deal about how the strait's going to be governed. Obviously, Iran wants to play a bigger role than the U.S. seems prepared to accept, but they're going to have to reach some kind of understanding, maybe some kind of economic relief for Iran, and maybe some broad general principles about how they're going to deal with the nuclear program, which would then have to be negotiated over the next 60 days. But really what we're talking about now, and I think that's at the heart of the president's frustration, what we're talking about now is undoing what the harm that the war caused. In other words, opening a strait that was not closed before the war began. That's what the main bone of this negotiation is about. All the rest at this point would be general principles, which could then have to be negotiated over a period of 30 to 60 days. So we're really not aiming for something particularly grandiose, but it would still be very important for the rest of the world if the Strait of Hormuz were reopened.
You mentioned this already about Trump's demand, basically for a bunch of Gulf countries to join the Abraham Accords, to normalize relations with Israel, which they're not going to do. We also don't know what Israel's going to do here, although they have given indications they're not really eager to see this move forward. What is that about, do you think? What is he just trying to place a demand? That's hard to get into his head, but what is your assessment?
Right. Well, that's one place I definitely cannot and will not try to get into. I don't know.
Go there.
I mean, it's almost. No, it beggars belief, because I think somebody, Lindsey Graham has spoken about it. Maybe the Prime Minister of Israel spoke about it. Somebody whispered in his ear, if you want to make this a dramatic success, you need to expand the Abraham Accords. You need to get countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar to agree to normalize relations with Israel. And by the way, they need you today because they need you to open the Strait of Hormuz. And so, yeah, they do owe you. That's what I'm sure they're telling him. And, I mean, we could try to guess what's going through his head. I'm sure it's appealing to him. Somebody has to tell him that that's completely crazy talk. Number one, there's no way these governments are going to normalize with this Israeli government. Mm-hmm. This Israeli government, after what they did in Gaza, what experts call a genocide, what they consider to be a genocide, at a time when this government actually may be on its way out. So why would they give a gift to Netanyahu when his successor may be in office in a few months? And to do it, again, as a reward for President Trump, when he's the one who created this mess in the first place. I mean, all of it is purely delusional, and hopefully he's just saying it and he doesn't mean it. If he does mean it, we're in for a very bumpy ride.
It's also not a requirement to move forward with an actual negotiation with the Iranians, for anyone who's confused about that out there either.
Right.
Rob Malley, thank you, as always, so much for joining us.
Thank you.